Jasper, in his human form, spent his days navigating the sprawling estate, a palpable frustration growing within him. Ethan Thorne, the reclusive man he'd adopted, seemed to recoil from his human presence, a stark contrast to their previous closeness. Once, their bond was undeniable. Ethan, confined to his sophisticated motorized wheelchair, found solace only in Jasper's feline companionship, shunning most human interaction. Jasper, then a sleek tabby, had watched Ethan with a familiar feline blend of devotion and subtle concern. He had often worried about Ethan's solitary existence, dreaming of ways to draw him out, to make him more connected to the world beyond their quiet mansion. It was this deep-seated desire that had fueled Jasper's extraordinary transformation. Yet, as a human, the closeness Jasper yearned for now eluded him. The affectionate touches, the tender embraces, the cherished endearment of my love, all had vanished, replaced by an unsettling politeness in Ethan's demeanor. The silence between them, once comforting, now felt heavy with unspoken distance. At a lavish fundraising gala, amidst the clinking of crystal and the hushed murmurs of the town's elite, Jasper felt an unfamiliar prickling sensation at the base of his spine. A chilling panic seized him. He knew with an instinctual certainty that his tail, a telltale sign of his true nature, was threatening to emerge. Without thought, he lunged towards Ethan, who was seated at a prominent table, his expression as composed as ever. Jasper landed squarely on Ethan's lap, his arms instinctively wrapping around Ethan's neck, pulling himself flush against the man's chest. He whispered, a barely audible rasp against Ethan's ear, "Ethan, my tail. It's coming out." Ethan's hand, resting casually on Jasper's waist, tightened imperceptibly. His face remained impassive, but a flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes. He swiftly excused himself, his exit a model of cool detachment, as if merely dismissing a minor inconvenience. Yet, once safely ensconced in a secluded restroom stall, away from prying eyes, Ethan's composure dissolved. His large hands, with a tender familiarity, began to stroke and knead the soft, bushy tail that had indeed materialized. A low, husky chuckle rumbled in his chest as he praised Jasper, his voice laced with an undeniable warmth. "Such a clever little thing, my love." Ethan's social sphere, Jasper had observed, harbored peculiar unspoken arrangements. A young man, barely out of his teens, visiting with an older male companion, had explained it to Jasper while the latter, in his feline form, was napping amidst a vibrant azalea bush. The young man had a round, soft face, less striking than Ethan's refined features, and a garrulous nature. He had a surprisingly soothing touch when he'd petted Jasper. The young man, whom Jasper heard called Mr. Hayes, described his relationship not as a boyfriend but as a dependent. He'd lowered his eyes, his hands slowing their rhythmic stroking of Jasper's fur, confessing that he was merely a kept man, a temporary arrangement, and shouldn't aspire to anything more. Jasper, as a cat, found the complexities of human relationships utterly baffling, but sensed the young man's profound sadness. Seeing the wistful expression, Jasper, in a rare moment of feline altruism, had decided to offer comfort with a gentle lick to the young man's hand. Before his tongue could make contact, Ethan's voice, sharper than usual, cut through the afternoon air from behind them. "Jasper." Though Ethan's tone seemed outwardly composed, the slight emphasis on the first syllable betrayed an underlying irritation. Jasper, ever attuned to Ethan's moods, sprang to his feet, darting to the side of Ethan's motorized wheelchair. Ethan, his human, was prone to such possessiveness, always requiring reassurance and constant attention. Jasper, a truly exceptional cat, was unparalleled in his devotion. No other feline would cater to a human's emotional needs with such delicate precision. Jasper recalled another acquaintance, a massive ginger tom living in a bustling city shelter, a bewildering, enclosed space teeming with humans. That cat, a renowned philanderer, would merely twitch a paw, and a multitude of humans would shower him with lavish salmon treats. He was notoriously fickle, never committing to a single human, a truly notorious Casanova of the feline world. A pang of something akin to envy sometimes stirred in Jasper, though he would never admit it. But he had, in a moment of youthful naivete, been charmed into a deep bond with Ethan. A commitment once made demanded unwavering loyalty. With a resigned sigh, Jasper had let out a series of purrs, a sugary sweet sound that would typically make his fur stand on end, but invariably brought a subtle, triumphant gleam to Ethan's eyes. As expected, Ethan had then scooped him onto his lap. Ethan was, in many ways, quite vulnerable. Unable to walk or climb, he was perpetually reliant on the wheels of his chair, a stark contrast to Jasper's inherent agility. Jasper often wondered how Ethan had survived his early years without a feline protector. Despite Ethan's physical challenges, Jasper's devotion was absolute. He would care for his cherished human impeccably. Mr. Thorne? The young man, Mr. Hayes, had scrambled to his feet, a look of utter confusion on his face. Ethan had merely nodded, his gaze distant, and remarked that Mr. Hayes's associate was looking for him. The young man had practically bolted. Watching him leave, Jasper noticed Ethan's expression darken slightly. Ethan then turned his attention back to Jasper, a hint of annoyance in his tone. He inquired if Jasper had truly enjoyed his company that much and if he had willingly allowed him to touch him. Caring for a human was indeed a challenging endeavor. Jasper sighed, a long, drawn-out sound, and turned to face Ethan, nudging his head into the crook of Ethan's arm. Ethan, for all his jealous tendencies, was easily mollified. He began to scratch Jasper beneath the chin, feigning a huff of displeasure. All covered in dust, and you just leap onto me, he muttered, a small smile playing on his lips. With a quiet whir, the motorized wheelchair began to move, carrying them both back towards the grand entrance of the estate. The young man's words, the concept of a dependent relationship, had left a peculiar impression on Jasper. In the following days, during his leisurely patrols of the estate, he often caught snippets of hushed human conversations, like the rustling of tiny mice, constantly revolving around the idea of belonging to someone. Stories filtered through the air. Tales of a dependent threatening to leave after being denied a proper title, or of others absconding, leaving their patron bereft. It seemed that, in human society, such a connection was considered essential. Yet Ethan, Jasper's human, seemed to have none. He remained largely isolated, seldom interacting with others, his entire world seemingly centered around his feline companion. While cats, by nature, embrace solitude, humans, Jasper observed, preferred to cluster together. In his past life, when he'd scavenged near the bustling urban park, groups of female humans would often surround him, vying for his affection. He'd always been generous with his charm towards them, even allowing them to stroke his belly, a detail he knew his current human must never discover. A wave of concern washed over Jasper as he settled onto a sun-warmed patio stone. Was Ethan's constant reliance on him, his reluctance to engage with other humans, causing him to become stunted in some way? Would he, lacking such a connection, be ostracized in the intricate world of humans? Ethan was already so vulnerable. If even a fleeting acquaintance like Mr. Hayes had a dependent, why not his beloved Ethan? A truly responsible feline guardian had much to ponder. Just as hunger pangs began to stir, reminding Jasper it was time for his 6th meal of the day, he decided to temporarily set aside these weighty human concerns. A well-fed cat, after all, was a better human carer. He hopped down from the planter, his paws patting softly as he made his way back towards the kitchen. The estate had seen a recent influx of transient workers, whom Jasper deemed unclaimed humans, and he, being a magnanimous cat, allowed their temporary presence. As he padded through a fragrant rose garden, a snatch of conversation froze him mid-stride. Heard someone tried to proposition Mr. Thorne again last week. Got thrown out, didn't they? And still hanging around like a lost puppy. Jasper's ears swiveled, his body tensing. Someone was trying to steal his human. From his vantage point, he could see a woman, her face flushed with what seemed like a mix of shame and indignation. Yet she held herself with an air of superiority. Ethan Thorne is a cripple, stuck in that chair his whole life. I wouldn't bother with him. She grew agitated, her voice rising. He just got lucky, born into wealth. What's so great about that? He acts so high and mighty, but after his accident, the thorns almost cut him off. If I'd pushed his chair back then, he would have been crawling on the ground like some pathetic dog. Jasper's fury surged, hotter and more intense than the time the massive Ginger Tom had tried to claim his prime sunbathing spot. How dare she compare his human to a wretched, cat-annoying dog? He crouched, a low growl rumbling in his chest, then sprang, sinking his teeth into her ankle. The woman shrieked, "What in the world is this feral beast?" She swiped at him, trying to dislodge him, but Jasper, swift and agile, easily evaded her clumsy attempts. He scrambled up a nearby oak, tail erect, glaring down at her. Stupid, cruel human. Deserves to be alone. The woman below continued to rant, but her companion, his face suddenly pale, whispered urgently in her ear. After a moment of frozen indignation, she allowed herself to be led away. Jasper felt a triumphant swell of pride. The great cat had defended his human and chased off the bullies. Yet, her words lingered, stirring fresh anxieties. He settled onto a thick branch, contemplating his feline philosophy. Ethan, his human, didn't seem to have many admirers. Humans, Jasper mused, often had such terrible taste. Even that unsightly ginger brute had plenty of fans. What did that say about their judgment? Alas, why couldn't Ethan simply be a cat? All these human troubles would simply cease to exist. Not long after, he heard Ethan's familiar call. Jasper? Jasper peered through the leaves, a furry head popping out, and chirped a soft meow. He saw Ethan's unresponsive legs, a stark reminder that humans couldn't scale trees like cats. Ethan, spotting him, inhaled sharply. He told Jasper not to move, stating he would get someone. Get someone for what? Jasper thought. It's just a leap. Ignoring Ethan's startled gaze, Jasper launched himself from the tree. Ethan's body lurched forward, an instinctive lunge to catch him, nearly unbalancing his wheelchair. Jasper hurried to his side, letting out a series of worried meows. A human so large would be impossible for a cat to carry by the scruff if he fell. Ethan remained bowed, his gaze flicking from his legs to Jasper. His long eyelashes, a soft curtain, made Jasper want to lick them, to soothe away whatever sadness lingered. Ethan seemed vexed that Jasper had disregarded his command, yet he hadn't immediately gathered him into his arms. Finally, with a sigh, Ethan reached down, pulling Jasper onto his lap. Ethan murmured about Jasper jumping from such a height and getting hurt, noting his own inability to catch him. Jasper wasn't hurt. It was Ethan who was distressed. With a touch of playful guilt, Jasper nestled deeper into his lap, purring contentedly. That evening, to soothe Ethan's ruffled feathers, Jasper, in his cat form, graciously permitted himself to sleep on the human's plush mattress. He hadn't anticipated such a betrayal. Ethan, instead of cherishing his presence, had inexplicably subjected him to a dreaded bath. Jasper had turned his back in indignant fury, presenting his hindquarters for toweling. Cats comfort humans, and cats are good. Humans find cats dirty, and humans are bad, he mused. Yet, Ethan's drying ministrations were remarkably gentle. As Ethan meticulously dried his fur, Jasper found himself succumbing to a profound drowsiness, his eyelids growing heavy. Ethan, after switching off the bedside lamp, had softly told him to rest, playfully adding that he shouldn't use him as a springboard in the middle of the night. Jasper, too weary to acknowledge the playful accusation, drifted into a deep sleep. He dreamt of the day he had found Ethan. He had just emerged victorious from a fierce skirmish with Big Tom, a scruffy ginger cat who had dared to challenge his dominance over Maplewood Lane. Though bearing a few minor scratches, they were badges of honor, proof of his reign. Proudly carrying a discarded deli slice, his hard-won prize, he had surveyed his domain from atop a sturdy fence. Below, he noticed a lone human, unlike any he'd seen before. This human sat upon a peculiar contraption of large wheels. Curiosity piqued, Jasper had paused, tilting his head to observe. Rain had just fallen, and a shallow puddle in the cracked pavement had snared one of the human's strange wheels, immobilizing him. The seemingly insignificant puddle, which Jasper had navigated countless times, had trapped this large, clumsy human. He felt a pang of pity. How long had he been stuck? Had he eaten? As the undisputed ruler of Maplewood Lane, protecting a small human was well within his capabilities. Jasper leapt from the fence, depositing the deli slice near the stalled wheel, generously chirping, "Eat, human." There's more where that came from. The human, startled, had widened his eyes in surprise. Where did this little cat come from? Little cat? Jasper felt his dignity wounded. He let out several loud meows, circling the human twice to emphasize his impressive size and girth, a silent reprimand for such an obvious falsehood. The human, however, hadn't understood. He continued, "Are you hurt? Did other cats bully you?" The ultimate insult. Jasper, unable to bear it, had nudged the human's pant leg, urging him to stop his nonsensical chatter and eat. The human, still misinterpreting, had said he wasn't carrying food, but someone would arrive shortly, and he could ask them to bring some for Jasper. Exasperated, Jasper had snatched the deli slice and leapt onto the human's lap. Such a foolish human. Does a cat need to hand-deliver food to your mouth? The human's surprise deepened, then softened into an expression of profound tenderness. "Thank you, sweetie." "Sweetie?" Jasper bristled. He shook the rainwater from his fur while perched on the human's lap, striving to convey his majestic bearing and earn the human's appropriate deference. This human, Jasper quickly learned, was remarkably picky, refusing the deli slice. Jasper, scandalized, had chastised him with a series of indignant meows. But as the human listened, a gentle smile had bloomed on his face. Jasper had sighed, defeated. Humans are just so dense. Eventually, the human's rescuer arrived, freeing his strange wheeled contraption from the puddle. As Jasper prepared for his grand departure, he heard the human ask, "Sweetie, do you want to come home with me?" The human possessed extraordinary eyes, deep pools of the gentlest lake light, shimmering with a soft, inviting sparkle. Mesmerized, Jasper had, in a dizzying moment of impulsiveness, agreed. He had, quite haphazardly, acquired a human. It was a remarkably rash decision for a cat who had so many admirers. On the very day he had defeated Big Tom and claimed sovereignty over Maplewood Lane, his legendary reign had come to an abrupt end, charmed away by a human. Ethan would never know the depth of the love he had received, the love of a true cat king. As the dream swirled into a vortex, pulling him deeper into its depths, the words echoed in his ears. "Do you want to come home with me? Home with me, a dependent." A dependent? Jasper's eyes snapped open. A sudden realization struck him. Of course, that's why Ethan didn't have a dependent. That's what he had meant all those years ago. He had asked Jasper to be his dependent. Honestly, humans are so unclear. He'd been worried for so long. A moment later, Jasper became acutely aware of a profound change in his own body. He looked down at his paws, long, large, smooth. Human skin. Human hands. He had become human. Overwhelmed with excitement, he eagerly shook the sleeping figure beside him. "You won't be a man without a dependent anymore, Ethan, because your dependent is here." Ethan's eyes fluttered open, but instead of the joy Jasper expected, his gaze was chillingly analytical, sharply scrutinizing. A fierce, almost hostile look. If Jasper still had fur, it would have bristled. He disliked being regarded with such an invasive, suspicious stare. It ignited a spark of anger within him. He gnashed his teeth, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Who are you? How did you get into my room?" Ethan's face paled as he scanned the room, pushing himself up on an elbow. His initially calm voice became tinged with urgency as he noticed something amiss. "Where's Jasper? What have you done with my cat?" Hearing that his human's first thought was of him brought a renewed warmth to Jasper's chest. Humans are inherently dim-witted. Unlike cats, they lack a keen sense of smell, so it's understandable that he wouldn't recognize his own cat. Speaking of which, if he was human, could he now finally enjoy those drinks with long straws? Humans always complained that cats didn't drink enough water, but they were the real culprits, always needing to add things to their drinks to make them palatable. Jasper was indulging in these delightful fantasies when he saw Ethan stretch out an arm, reaching with some difficulty for a button on his bedside table. Jasper knew it was the Grandpa George summoning device. Whenever Ethan pressed it, a series of peculiar beeps would emanate, a language only Grandpa George, the butler, understood. Then, the butler would appear with unnerving swiftness. Grandpa George, Jasper suspected, belonged to some sinister species. His appearances always boded ill. Either he forcibly subjected Jasper to baths or dragged him to the vet for dreaded injections. Yet, he performed these nefarious deeds with a perpetually cheerful smile, more outwardly benevolent than the white-bearded, bespectacled old man who appeared in advertisements all over town. Indeed, it was as they said, "Still waters run deep." Cats are truly wise, Jasper thought, able to grasp such profound human idioms. Though he still puzzled over humans' obsession with food, their sayings always seemed to revolve around it. Little greedy cat, big greedy human. Ethan, in Jasper's eyes, appeared remarkably frail and vulnerable whenever confronted by Grandpa George, the estate's formidable butler. Each time Grandpa George insisted on removing Jasper for a vet visit or an unwanted bath, Ethan would sit, helpless, in his motorized wheelchair, his brow furrowed with impotent concern. When Jasper, upon his return, would launch into a furious, meowing complaint, Ethan would lament, his eyes often red-rimmed, that he hadn't wanted it, that Grandpa George was resolute, and that he'd fought fiercely to retrieve Jasper. Ethan's sincerity was undeniable, a profound shame seemingly emanating from his inability to safeguard his cat. Jasper, deeply empathetic, would offer a comforting lick to Ethan's hand. Good human, bad butler. Witnessing Ethan's melancholic and powerless demeanor, Jasper had secretly vowed to one day overcome the wicked butler and rescue his beloved human. Seeing the imminent summoning of the butler, Jasper panicked. He instinctively swatted at Ethan's face. Ethan's head snapped to the side, a bright red mark blooming on his cheek. "Oh, right." Jasper hastily began to rub the mark. Humans, he remembered, were not like cats. Even blunt nails could leave a sting. He recalled being hit by a cruel human when he was a kitten, the memory still vivid. But now he was strong, capable of inflicting real harm. Ethan, seizing Jasper's hand, tried to swing him off the bed, but Jasper effortlessly deflected the attack. He straddled Ethan, carefully moderating his strength, and delivered another light slap to the other cheek, hoping to shock him into recognition. How strange. I always hit him like this. Every morning, if the esteemed cat's hunger was ignored, a precise pat to Ethan's face would remind him of the hunger demon. Without even opening his eyes, Ethan would know it was Jasper, his fingers gently squeezing Jasper's paw, bringing it to his lips for several soft mois. Of course, Jasper generally disregarded the subsequent pronouncements about doctors suggesting fewer meals due to his excessive weight. Those doctors, with their perpetually exhausted and austere countenances, clearly spoke ill of salmon treats because they couldn't afford them. Why couldn't Ethan recognize him now that he was human? A wave of sadness shot through Jasper, and he delivered another plaintive pat. If Ethan were to transform into a cat, Jasper was certain he would recognize him by scent alone. Clearing his throat, Jasper attempted to speak. Meow? Meow meow? Ugh! A human imitating cat sounds is utterly grating, like a distressed lamb. He quickly clamped his mouth shut, imagining the ridicule from other cats, especially Big Tom, if they heard him. Fortunately, he discovered that by organizing his thoughts, he could spontaneously articulate human words. By the heavens, I truly am a genius cat, a rare breed indeed. Swelling with newfound confidence, he joyfully uttered his first human sentence to Ethan. Can you understand me now that I speak human? Ethan's body beneath him stiffened, then began to tremble with what appeared to be profound mortification. Seeing Ethan's reddened eyes, Jasper suddenly felt a surge of distress and helplessness. He seemed to have deeply wounded his human. Unable to devise a solution, he instinctively reverted to his feline habits, pressing his head against Ethan's chin, purring softly. Meow, meow, meow. He hadn't meant to upset him. Ethan, however, did not respond with his usual affectionate gestures. Instead, he lay stiff, silently staring at the ceiling, his chest heaving with agitated breaths. Ethan instructed Jasper to leave the room, stating he wouldn't press charges, then pleaded that his cat was gone and he needed to find him. I am right here, Jasper declared. Ethan fell silent for a few seconds, then gritted out, You're unwell. I am not unwell, Jasper retorted indignantly. Dr. Lewis praised me recently, said I was one of the healthiest, most robust cats he'd ever examined. You can't call me unwell. He despised being called sick. His closest friend, Ash, a scruffy tomcat, had been abandoned by his human family after falling ill. Yet, Ash never harbored resentment, always recounting the story of his rescue with unwavering pride. I was hit by a car, left for dead in a dumpster, Ash would explain. And then, my dad appeared out of nowhere, scooped me up, and rushed me to the clinic, saving my life. Jasper, then a naive kitten, had innocently asked why his dad had eventually left him. Ash would fall silent, his head drooping, then nervously groom his fur, vaguely suggesting it was because he'd broken his dad's favorite mug, and that he'd surely return once he found a replacement. Only later had Jasper understood. Ash had developed a severe skin condition, losing patches of fur, rendering him unattractive. Humans were so odd. They overlooked a broken leg but recoiled from a skin ailment. Even with Jasper sharing his food, Ash had quickly succumbed, his last moments spent meticulously cleaning his scruffy coat, hoping to appear pretty enough for his dad to want him back. This was why Jasper loathed hospitals and the mere suggestion of illness. I am your cat. I found you on Maplewood Lane. You were so particular, you wouldn't even touch a deli slice. Who else but a patient and capable cat king like me would have taken you in? Jasper boasted, then seized Ethan's hand and guided it to his own hair, enthusiastically inviting, You can touch my fur now. It's different, but still very soft. You'll get used to it after a few strokes. Ethan offered no verbal confirmation. His fingers, however, resting on Jasper's hair, moved almost imperceptibly. Just then, Jasper's ears twitched, picking up the distinct sound of footsteps approaching the door, the familiar cadence of Grandpa George. In a flash, Jasper scrambled off the bed, but in the air, attempting to burrow beneath it. This time, not even 100 salmon treats will coax me out. Meow. How can I not fit now that I'm human? Ethan, still bewildered, watched Jasper's frantic attempts from the bed, his lips moving soundlessly. You, Jasper, extracting his head, then bounded back onto the bed, pulling Ethan's duvet over himself, rolling twice to press tightly against Ethan's body, curled up in apprehension. You have to protect me this time. Don't let that bad butler give me shots. Grandpa George knocked twice. Jasper nudged Ethan's side, only to find him still staring blankly, lost in thought. A few seconds of silence followed outside the door, then a resounding crash as the robust old butler, like a seasoned enforcer, burst into the room. He strode purposefully inside, his greeting master Ethan, "Are you all right?" dying on his lips as he stared, utterly dumbfounded, at Jasper's head peeking out from beside Ethan. Grandpa George pointed, his face stark with outrage. "We just dealt with one of these characters last week. Haven't you people learned your lesson?" Jasper, now experienced in human obtuseness, understood that if he didn't explicitly state his case, their dense human brains would never grasp his transformation. He glanced at his now slender arm. It wouldn't be so easy for the butler to grab him now. Moreover, he was human. His status as the rightful head of the household needed to be immediately asserted. "So," he challenged, his voice laced with righteous indignation, "do you know who I am?" Grandpa George blinked, automatically responding, "Who are you?" "I am Ja." Ethan's palm suddenly covered Jasper's mouth, cutting off his words. Jasper, unable to resist, licked the soft flesh, then gently nipped it. Ethan, as if burned, snatched his hand back, glaring at Jasper. "What?" Jasper stared back with innocent wide eyes, revealing his small, sharp canines. Grandpa George, observing their interaction, stiffened. His finger then moved to point at Ethan, his expression one of profound disappointment. He reprimanded Ethan for keeping a young lover, implying it was a beastly act and urging him to bring someone home openly if he truly cared for them. Jasper nodded along. Cats are, after all, a type of beast, so no argument there. However, he extended a hand from beneath the covers, gravely correcting Grandpa George. "Of course, I'm an adult. I'm 2 years old. I'm a robust, powerful adult cat." 20. Ethan interrupted, quickly amending. "He's 20. 20? Only 20? Grandpa George exclaimed. "Isn't that still in college?" Jasper honestly replied, "I haven't been to college." Grandpa George slapped his thigh, indignant. "I knew it. How could such a young man be tricked into coming home with an old man like you? Taking advantage of someone uneducated." His gaze at Jasper was overflowing with a paternal fondness. Ethan closed his eyes, a vein throbbing in his temple. "George, it's not what you think." Jasper, resolving to assert his role as the head of the household and mediate this domestic dispute, decided to clarify for his human. He objectively recounted Ethan's actions. He stated that Ethan hadn't really tricked him, but sometimes exhibited possessive behaviors, restricting his contact with others, always insisting they sleep together, and relentlessly kissing him if he refused. Jasper concluded that Ethan was actually quite good to him and shouldn't be criticized. Wait, was Grandpa George about to faint? Fortunately, the butler was robust enough not to swoon. He launched into a lengthy lecture directed at Ethan, a torrent of words that made Jasper's human brain feel muddled, prompting him to yawn uncontrollably, secretly, of course, nestled against Ethan's chest. If Ethan noticed, he might scold Jasper too. Finally, Grandpa George shook his head, sighing deeply, and departed. Ethan gently nudged Jasper's shoulder. He urged Jasper to clarify things before falling asleep. So annoying. Humans are such a bother. Even as a cat, Ethan would often disturb his naps to rub his belly, always adding, "My love, have you gained weight again?" Ethan looked at Jasper with a complex expression, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Are you really Jasper?" "I am," Jasper affirmed. He thought for a moment, then offered proof. "Under the third closet on the left in your dressing room, there's still a stash of my jerky. How did you become human?" Ethan's disbelief was palpable. He murmured the question again. How could a cat turn into a human? So irritating. If my tail were still here, I'd swat him with it. Ethan suddenly remembered something, reaching for the sleek black rectangle on his bedside table. His finger scrolled across its glowing surface. Jasper's eyes widened, no longer sleepy. He sat up, loudly accusing Ethan of ignoring him for the ugly black thing when he was a cat, and now that he was human. Jasper grew increasingly incensed, letting out a frustrated growl before biting a corner of the black rectangle. "Bad thing. I'll destroy you, you fickle human." "Hey!" Ethan exclaimed, hastily pulling Jasper's mouth away. "Why are you biting my phone? It's unsanitary." Jasper, feeling unfairly criticized for defending his honor, saw his reflection in the phone screen. A small image of his former self. A sleek, round-eyed tabby with glossy fur, sitting regally on the windowsill, exuding an air of confident majesty. It holds a tiny version of me. His anger dissipated, replaced by a delighted admiration for his valiant, dignified feline form. His irritation gone, he rested his head on Ethan's shoulder, curiously watching what he was doing. Ethan shifted, seemingly uncomfortable. He tapped a small red square on the black device, and the screen filled with a video. Jasper squinted, then excitedly pointed at a small lump under the duvet in the video. That's the cat. Ethan's expression, however, remained profoundly serious. He watched, stunned, as the tabby cat nestled in his arms on screen, transformed, in a flash of blinding white light, into a naked young man. The image on the screen froze. Jasper poked the inactive screen, then looked at Ethan, who remained motionless. After a long moment, Ethan exhaled a shaky breath, turning his gaze to Jasper. The initial hostility was gone, replaced by something softer. "My love?" he asked, his voice tentative. Jasper, like a dog owner who finally teaches a stubborn hound to shake paws, felt a wave of relief and a pleased smile spread across his face. He wrapped his arms tightly around Ethan's waist, rubbing his cheek against Ethan's chest in an embrace of pure joy. "You finally believe it's me. You're so slow." While he knew one should encourage humans, he couldn't resist a small dig. Ethan deleted the video. Seeing Jasper's pout, he looked serious. He earnestly instructed Jasper not to tell anyone that he was once a cat. "Not even Grandpa George?" Jasper asked. Ethan firmly denied it. "No, absolutely not." "Oh," Jasper murmured, then stealthily glanced at Ethan, his eyes darting. He concluded, "Are you getting jealous again?" He offered a sympathetic reassurance. "Don't be jealous. I'm only good to you, even as a human." Ethan's face darkened. "Jealous of what? Where did you pick up such ridiculous notions?" After a moment, he huffed, "You know I get annoyed when you rub up against everyone you meet. No cat dignity." Oh, for crying out loud. Jasper was innocent. He didn't rub up against everyone. He wasn't itchy. Why did humans always attribute such things to cats? Ethan still seemed uneasy, his voice turning cautionary. He warned Jasper that not all humans were good, and some were very cruel, especially to small cats like him. "I know," Jasper countered. "I was attacked by bad humans when I was little, but I'm strong. I bit their hand until it bled." Ethan fell silent, then reached up, his fingers gently tracing a faint scar behind Jasper's ear. Jasper's ear tingled, and he involuntarily twitched. "Are you still checking if I'm your cat?" "No," Ethan replied, his touch on the scar light, as if handling something fragile. Perhaps it was the absence of fur, but the area where he touched felt as if tiny currents were running through it. Jasper's teeth ached. He felt an urge to bite. He met Ethan's dark eyes, and for the first time, dimly saw his own human reflection within them. Ethan's expression was intense, but Jasper no longer felt afraid. Cats were clever. They could distinguish between good and bad, malice and tenderness. After a moment, Ethan awkwardly withdrew his hand. Can you change back?" Jasper wrinkled his nose, looking troubled. "I don't know." Seeing his discomfort, Ethan sighed, pulling the duvet higher, up to Jasper's chin. "Just sleep for now." Only then did Jasper realize a crucial point. "You don't like me as a human, do you?" he asked politely, but his gaze was fiercely challenging. If Ethan dared to say no, he would bite him. As the TV shows taught him, this was courtesy before force. Humans shouldn't be spoiled. Ethan quickly denied it. "No, I'm not used to it. Cats adapt so quickly to being human," Jasper said, patting Ethan's hand. "You have to try too." Ethan chuckled softly, the heavy shadow on his brow lifting slightly. "All right, I'll try. Then let's sleep, Dad." Ethan's eyes immediately widened. "You called me what?" Dad. Jasper was bewildered by his extreme reaction. Otherwise, how am I supposed to address you? Just human? No. Ethan refused adamantly. You absolutely cannot call me that in front of others. His strong opposition annoyed Jasper. He grumbled. It's not like I wanted to. You're the one who kept calling yourself daddy when you held me, saying, who else could your daddy be but me? All right. Ethan clamped a hand over Jasper's mouth again, his ears turning crimson. I was wrong. Okay? But you can't call me that now that you're human. Then what should I call you? You can just call me by my name.
I'm Ethan Thorn.
Ethan Thorn. Jasper interrupted, enunciating each syllable. A tree growing on a mountain peak, he thought, recalling the literal translation of the original name, integrating American sounds. I know. Each human is unique. This is one of my human's distinctive marks. Ethan froze, his eyes trembling slightly. He cleared his throat, as if to mask his reaction, before moving on. You also need a new name. You can't be Jasper anymore. Jasper hesitated, a little reluctant. For the sake of feline affairs management, changing names in the cat world was incredibly complicated. Every cat cherished their first official name, regardless of how it sounded. He pondered for a while, his furrowed brow smoothing out. I've thought of a human name. You really are the smartest little cat. Coming up with your own name, Ethan praised, a hint of amusement in his eyes, offering encouragement. What is it? Jasper. Jasper? At the dining table, Grandpa George, upon hearing Ethan introduce Jasper's new name, momentarily lost control of his volume. Realizing his lapse, he quickly composed himself, giving Jasper a thumbs up. A truly magnificent and striking name, right? Jasper preened, his lips curving into a pleased smile. Grandpa George, despite his occasional villainy, had excellent taste. How serendipitous. Grandpa George chuckled. Our little house cat is also called Jasper. Jasper forced his smile down, marshaling every idiom he knew, and declared with utmost modesty, from the name alone, one can tell he is a handsome, strong, dignified, intelligent, lovable, unparalleled good cat. Ha ha ha. Grandpa George's laughter boomed. He's actually a silly cat, capable of chasing his own tail for an entire day. If Ethan hadn't quickly restrained Jasper, he would have lunged at the disrespectful old man. Grandpa George, oblivious to the near catastrophe, then turned to Ethan, his laughter fading into a reproving expression. He reprimanded Ethan for sending Jasper away late at night, questioning how he could do such a thing to just a cat, and offered to take Jasper to his own room if Ethan no longer wanted him. Jasper was deeply touched. He hadn't realized Grandpa George felt such profound affection for him. Then, the butler continued, if you absolutely must send him away, at least get him neutered first. I already have a script prepared, Grandpa George added, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Our Jasper is so gullible. Master Ethan, whatever you act out, he believes. Before, when we sent him to the vet, Ethan suddenly erupted into a violent, hacking cough beside Jasper, his face turning red around his eyes. He claimed he was overwhelmed with grief at the thought of not protecting Jasper. Jasper's nascent suspicion instantly transformed into heartfelt sympathy. He turned to Grandpa George, indignantly declaring, "Don't say another word. You're making him sad." Grandpa George, Jasper thought, why didn't you tell me about this new script? After dinner, while Ethan was in his study, Grandpa George stealthily approached Jasper. He quietly asked Jasper about his relationship with Master Ethan. Jasper leaned in, lowering his voice, asking Grandpa George if he knew about dependence. Grandpa George, without chiding Jasper for calling him Grandpa instead of Uncle, became indignant on Jasper's behalf. He stated that Master Ethan shouldn't have used such a term, promising to educate him, and clarified that they didn't follow such arrangements. A boyfriend was a boyfriend, not a dependent like a drill sergeant lining up new recruits. Seeing his anger, and remembering Ethan's earlier instructions, Jasper quickly waved his hands, denying it. He explained that as a cat, his understanding of human relationships was limited, and he struggled to define their bond. So, he offered a contrary explanation, stating that Ethan was his dependent, and he was Ethan's master, asserting his rightful place as the head of the household. Grandpa George fell silent. He scrutinized Jasper from head to toe, his gaze shifting from hesitation to confusion, then to shock and finally, to a strange acceptance. After a long moment, he chuckled awkwardly. "Haha, you young people certainly have a lot of energy." Jasper didn't understand the connection, but it didn't stop him from grandly declaring to the butler, "Grandpa George, rest assured, Ethan is fortunate to be with me." He'd picked up the line from a TV show they'd watched together. Unfortunately, Grandpa George didn't seem to grasp the sentiment, instead walking away with a dazed expression, his steps faltering slightly. Ethan emerged from his study, his motorized wheelchair gliding to a stop beside Jasper, who was dozing on the sofa. Jasper, seeing him, naturally rested his head on Ethan's lap. Humans had such unhealthy sleep patterns. Couldn't sleep when they should, then constantly tired when awake. He resolved that all humans should adjust their schedules to match those of cats. Ethan's hand hovered for a few seconds before settling, almost deliberately, on Jasper's hair. He asked Jasper what he and George had discussed, noting the strange look on George's face earlier. Even though Jasper felt certain he hadn't uttered a single incorrect word, a peculiar guilt nagged at him, prompting him to change the subject. He playfully tugged at Ethan's fingers, remarking, "Why were you only in your little black box for such a short time today? You used to spend ages in there. It was so boring for me, all alone outside as a cat." Ethan seemed taken aback, his gaze softening, a look of almost startled tenderness washing over him. He offered an apology, explaining that he hadn't realized Jasper would be annoyed by his extended absence, thinking Jasper would simply find him bothersome. "It's all right," Jasper generously assured him. "It's true, sometimes when I'm busy playing, I don't want you around. You can be a bit too clingy for a human." Ethan forced a tight, humorless smile. "Well, my apologies then. Didn't mean to disturb your peace." "The sun is in a marvelous mood today," Jasper observed, gesturing towards the radiant sunshine spilling across the entryway. He then extended an invitation, "Would you like to go out and play with me?" Ethan typically disliked leaving the estate. Unless absolutely necessary, he would remain cloistered indoors all day, almost like a light-averse plant. Jasper often worried that such prolonged confinement would lead to a human form of depression, so he constantly sought ways to encourage him outdoors. Each day, Jasper would wander through every corner of the estate, awaiting Ethan's eventual appearance, and Ethan inevitably always found him. Nature, in its boundless generosity, didn't care about the purpose of Ethan's excursions or his hurried pace. It simply showered him with sunlight and carried the scent of blossoms on the breeze as he searched for Jasper. Ethan believed he was simply allowing his free-spirited cat to roam the grounds, unaware that it was, in fact, the cat taking his reluctant human for a walk. Perhaps it was still his unfamiliarity with the human body, but Jasper found walking somewhat cumbersome, lacking the lithe agility he possessed as a cat. He looked at Ethan with a touch of envy, a nostalgic longing for the days when his smaller form allowed him to perch on Ethan's lap like a personal mount. He chose not to push Ethan's wheelchair, instinctively feeling that humans wouldn't appreciate such a gesture. Instead, he matched Ethan's pace, taking 2 steps, then a skip, then slowing to wait. "You don't need to stay right next to me," Ethan said, a hint of resignation in his gentle voice. "Just behave as you would if you were a cat. Act as you do as a human. Hold on," Ethan exclaimed as Jasper emerged from a patch of vibrant petunias, holding out his open palm. A delicate, pale purple butterfly, its wings fluttering, soared past, briefly landing on Ethan's wrist, which rested on the armrest of his chair. Jasper's gaze followed the butterfly, then settled on Ethan. "Ethan," he said, "sometimes I think being human isn't so bad. What makes it good?" Ethan inquired. Jasper thought for a moment. As a human, he mused, the world feels smaller but also clearer. Before, the sky often looked gray, as if it were always on the verge of rain. Now I see its beautiful colors. Sunny days and rainy days are vastly different, not just because of the water. Butterflies and flowers were just blurry patches of color. Only the butterflies moved, and the flowers had scent. But now, he shared earnestly, I just saw the patterns on a butterfly's wings for the first time. They're like eyes. It's incredible. Ethan chuckled, a soft, mirthful sound. Anything else? Yes. Jasper continued, as they reached the foot of a tall oak, his favorite climbing tree. He found his footing, and with a few swift movements using all four limbs, he scrambled up the trunk. Ethan, he called, perched on a sturdy branch, leaning out, a wide grin on his face. This is great. I can still climb trees. For a stray cat, climbing was an indispensable skill. This was why, the first time Ethan had attempted to trim Jasper's claws, Jasper had let out a blood-curdling shriek and struggled so violently that he'd startled Ethan. Ethan had then cradled him, clumsily patting his back like one would a human infant, murmuring, I'm so sorry. My love. Don't be scared. We won't trim them. A scratch, inadvertently inflicted by Jasper during his frantic struggles, bled faintly on Ethan's jawline, making him look rather disheveled. Yet his handsome face held not a trace of anger. Jasper had let out a soft meow, then awkwardly rubbed his claws twice against Ethan's suit trousers before slowly relaxing and settling back down. Ethan, ignoring his bleeding jaw, had instead scratched Jasper's chin, saying with a smile, Good. It seems you rarely come to harm when you're out. Jasper, feeling a mix of guilt and unease, licked Ethan's fingers twice. Humans break so easily, he thought. I didn't even use the strength I use when fighting Big Tom. A human would instantly break from that. For the first time, his sharp claws felt like a burden, forcing him to be delicate and perpetually cautious. Ethan watched Jasper intently from below the tree, as if fearing that Jasper would vanish if he blinked. Jasper, he called, reverting to Jasper's cat name now that no one else was around, his hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair, knuckles white. He asked if Jasper still thought he was a cat, questioning if any old branch could support his current weight, and what would happen if he fell from such a high tree. Don't worry, Jasper reassured him. I can speak human now, so I can finally explain. I've climbed many trees far taller than this one. I won't fall. Don't be angry, he coaxed. Look, Jasper began to shake the branch vigorously. The tree, spared from feline claws, now endured human hands, and a shower of petals rained down. Ethan sat beneath it, as if caught in a sudden downpour without an umbrella, frozen, completely drenched in fragrant blossoms. You're always so reluctant to go outside, Jasper said, adopting the tone of a parent scolding a picky child. I have to bring the flowers home to you. As a cat, I could only ever bring back one bloom at a time. You still haven't filled a single book. But now it's great. You can collect as many as you want. Your whole bookshelf will smell lovely.
Ethan, I'm amazing.
I can climb trees, I can fight, I can hunt. Don't be afraid of the world outside the house. I'll protect you. Ethan stared at Jasper, then abruptly averted his gaze, as if his eyes had been scorched, unable to look any longer. He mumbled, Where did a little cat like you learn such charming tricks? Jasper climbed down. Ethan's jaw was clenched, but this time he said nothing. His gaze merely fixed on Jasper again. Jasper walked back to him, intrigued by Ethan's flushed face. With his hands behind his back, he tilted his head, looking left, then right, finally bending down to look up at Ethan. Ethan, overwhelmed, finally protested, What are you looking at? Ethan, Jasper exclaimed, as if discovering a new mouse nest. I found that you're even more handsome as a human. Ethan's face grew even redder. So I wasn't handsome as a cat? No offense, Jasper replied honestly, but humans, to a cat, all look a bit plain. Ethan's reddened face turned dark. Well, now I have some color, he retorted, clearly annoyed. Squat down. Jasper grumbled. You're not going to try to teach me to shake hands next, are you? He squatted. Ethan plucked a flower petal from Jasper's hair, cupping it in his palm. This one is enough. How can it be enough? Jasper furrowed his brows, perplexed by Ethan's easy contentment. I have another gift for you. Oh? Ethan's eyes softened, clearly intrigued. Jasper grinned, then placed a large, multi-legged caterpillar he'd subtly snatched into Ethan's palm, right beside the petal. The caterpillar, under Ethan's expectant gaze, squirmed an impromptu performance. Ethan's expression, for a fleeting moment, went utterly blank with a mixture of surprise and something else. Jasper then quoted a profound human adage, explaining that though the gift was small, the thought was deep, hoping he wouldn't despise it. You are what you eat, I suppose. Thank you. This was Jasper's first day as a human. He had gained acceptance from his human, acquired a human name, and everything seemed to be progressing splendidly. Immersed in his excitement, he felt there was little difference between being human and being a cat, between Jasper and Jasper the cat. He naively believed every day would be just like this. But gradually, Jasper realized Ethan didn't seem to share his sentiment. Ethan began to subtly distance himself, a gentle yet firm pushing away. He was still kind, providing a spacious room right next to his, dedicating time each day to play, even brushing Jasper's hair and personally preparing human meals tailored to a cat's palate. He even had Grandpa George set up an elaborate terrarium specifically for the caterpillar Jasper had given him. Yet something was undeniably different. Ethan no longer permitted Jasper to sleep in his bed, no longer hugged or kissed him, no longer buried his face in Jasper's stomach, letting out uninhibited shouts. Ethan now treated him with an excess of courtesy and politeness, but a distinct lack of intimacy. Jasper endured this for several days, rolling around his empty room, utterly bored. Had he not remembered Ethan's instructions, he would have howled for a day and a night straight, demonstrating the cost of confining a cat to a room. A week later, he resolved to take action, scratching at Ethan's door. Ethan had returned late that evening. Jasper had waited outside his door, almost dozing off, until he heard the familiar whir of wheels approaching, finally stopping directly in front of him. Rubbing his eyes, Jasper first noticed the small shadow cast by the wheelchair, then looked up to see Ethan's impeccably tailored suit trousers, his crisp shirt, and a calm, yet subtly weary expression. Ethan's eyebrows twitched slightly upon seeing Jasper, the chill of the outside world momentarily receding from his demeanor. He seemed surprised, then faintly amused, asking Jasper what he was doing squatting there so late, implying he was playing watch-cat outside his room. It's always like this, Jasper thought. Before, when Ethan was pleased, he'd call him my love. When he was annoyed, it was his full cat name, Jasper. But ever since Jasper became human, Ethan had conspicuously avoided any endearments. Ethan, Jasper said, still squatting, looking up at him, not with sadness, but with a bewildered frankness. You haven't called me my love in a long time. Ethan hesitated, seemingly unsure how to respond, lost in thought. Is it because I'm not a cat anymore? Jasper pressed directly. Yes, Ethan admitted, lifting his hand as if to stroke Jasper's head, a familiar gesture from their feline days. Instead, he adjusted the cuff of his other sleeve, saying lightly, almost joking, "Look at you now, you're so big. You stand taller than me in my chair. Calling you my love just doesn't feel right. But you promised you would try to adapt." Jasper's brow furrowed. This was the one thing he couldn't accept. Ethan had promised, yet he hadn't followed through. The distinction between Jasper the cat and this person I don't know what to call was too easily and clearly drawn. Jasper suddenly felt like a distant acquaintance, a stranger to Ethan, and the realization stung. It was like his favorite toy being ruined and discarded, replaced by a new, more expensive one, only to be told, "Isn't it better?" Humans were always like this. "Fine," Jasper said, standing up and adjusting his trousers. Then I'll go sleep in Grandpa George's room. He disliked wearing human clothes, especially trousers. But Ethan had warned him that humans who ran around naked would be forced to eat lima bean surprise. An unknown but clearly terrifying fate. What exactly was so dreadful about lima bean surprise? Perhaps it just tasted awful. Wait, Ethan called out just as Jasper took a step. Ethan looked genuinely shocked. He asked Jasper why he was going to sleep in George's room. Jasper turned back, stating matter-of-factly, "Because I can't get used to this room. And you won't let me sleep in your bed. Grandpa George has my old cat bed in his room. I'm going to sleep in my cat bed." Ethan opened his mouth, then stammered, unable to articulate his thoughts. Jasper, growing impatient, decided to simply leave. "Wait," Ethan said, a newfound determination in his voice, now deeper. Tonight you'll sleep here." Regaining access to Ethan's room felt like a king returning to his domain. Jasper's heart swelled with exhilaration. Before Ethan could even react, Jasper swiftly shed his clothes, completely at ease, and bounded onto the bed. "Come on," he called, patting the space beside him, eagerly inviting Ethan. "Why are you still standing at the door? Did your big wheels get stuck again?" He sat up in his haste, the duvet slipping, exposing his bare torso to Ethan's gaze. Ethan's eyes darted like a startled mouse, constantly avoiding Jasper's form. Jasper, suspicious, followed his gaze, but saw no stray insects. He then realized Ethan was probably put off by his nakedness. "What's wrong with you?" Jasper demanded. "You're really getting on my nerves now. We're not outside. Do humans sleep in their clothes?" He pointed to the edge of his underwear, emphasizing, "And I'm not completely naked." "That's not what I meant," Ethan said. "Just cover yourself quickly, you'll get cold." Ethan then went to shower. Jasper, meanwhile, squatted outside the bathroom door, intently watching the shifting silhouette behind the frosted glass, constantly poised to rush in and rescue him. "I'll come in and help you wash," he offered. His only response was a sharp, final click as the lock engaged. Under Jasper's earnest scrutiny, Ethan finished his shower with unusual speed. Ethan propped himself up, easing onto the bed. Then, as if moving cargo, shifted his legs onto the mattress. As he did so, he kept his head lowered, his profile turned away, his expression calm, a practiced composure that revealed no hint of negativity or frustration. Yet Jasper, being a cat and not a human, could sense his human's distress. Unhappy humans had a bitter scent, more acrid than rotting flowers or unpalatable medicine. A bitterness so profound that even Jasper struggled to process the sadness. Ash, his old friend, had lost a paw, yet could still walk and climb, albeit a little slower than other cats. Ethan, however, was different. Jasper had once witnessed him falling helplessly in his room, the simple act of rising an insurmountable mountain for him. At that moment, Jasper had wished he wasn't just a cat, but a human too, so he wouldn't be forced to merely stand by, meowing frantically and nipping at Ethan's sleeve, utterly useless. Jasper was still new to being human, so when Ethan finally looked at him, he couldn't keep his eyes silent, nor his mouth from speaking. "Ethan, don't be scared. I'm very strong now. Even if you fall, it's all right. I won't let you fall. You don't need to fear other people or even being alone." Ethan suddenly chuckled, raising a hand to cover Jasper's eyes.
Silly cat.
"I understand so much more now that I'm human." Silly cat and silly fool sounded similar, and Jasper knew it wasn't a compliment. He rolled his eyes, his eyelashes brushing against Ethan's palm. For just that one night, the warmth against his eyes was fleeting, brief as